His name is synonymous with television journalism. With a partner of over 20 years, Robert McNeil, he helped redefine the evening newscast and brought in-depth discussion of current affairs to the American public. A former Marine, he has been called the Dean of Moderators for having conducted almost a dozen presidential debates. He has received an Emmy Award, a National Humanities Medal, and in 1999 he was inducted into the Television Hall of Fame. But beneath it all beats the heart of a young boy who loves telling stories. And he's published over 24 novels, plays, and memoirs. Hello, I'm Ernie Manouse. Coming up on Interviews, our conversation with the executive editor and former anchor of the NewsHour on PBS, journalist and author, Jim Lehrer. How do you feel journalism has changed over your career?
Well, it's like a revolution changes things. Unfortunately, the changes or the revolution isn't over yet. And all you have to do is ask Mr. Mubarak and Mr. Gaddafi what it's like to be in the middle of a revolution. And those of us in journalism right now are the least knowledgeable about what the future is going to be. We're trying like hell to form it. And we want it very much to turn out well. But right now, the changes are enormous that have already happened and that could still happen. And it all comes about because of good things. Mm-hmm. The good things being the technological revolution and the fact that there are thousands of sources of information.
But is that ultimately good or bad, to have that much access without control of it?
Well, that's the problem. Back in the old days, back when I started, everybody had shared information. Everybody read their daily newspaper, watched one of the 3 commercial television network news programs, and maybe skimmed read Time and Newsweek, and that was it. And it was all straight information. And everybody, if you were to then go have dinner with somebody or go to a meeting at night to talk about issues, you'd all start at the same place before you start expressing opinions and all of that. Now, that's no longer the case. Now there are thousands of ways to get, thousands of sources of information. And it comes from blogs, it comes from shout shows on radio, it comes from shout shows and all kinds of weird things on cable television, and it comes from an increasing number of other ways. And the problem is that, as you said, is sorting through it. I'm a gatekeeper. Mm-hmm. I'm an old-fashioned white male gatekeeper in journalism. And this is what all of us were like. That's what we did, is we went through all the stuff, 2,000 stories, and we choose 20. Right. And whether it's on a front newspaper or a radio newscast or a television newscast. What's happened now is there's so much information, and it's coming at us like a storm, more and more every day. They put 70 million books on the Internet and all that sort of stuff. What has to happen, and we're in the process of doing it, is creating a whole new school, a whole new generation of gatekeepers, of people don't have time or the interest in sitting in front of reading of a computer screen or a television set, getting all this information all the time, much less listening to the radio all the time, or people yelling at each other and all that. But they do want to have access to all this new stuff.
But I fear it goes the other way, in that because people are selecting what they want, they don't have the gatekeepers like you were to tell them what they need to know. I can spend my whole day just reading entertainment stories. Someone else can just read sports. And I think they're limiting their view as opposed to increasing it with all this information.
Well, that's the problem. That's why we're in mid-revolution. That's exactly what is happening. People who come at politics from the left, they're talking to other people who come at it from the left. Right, the same, and as you say, if somebody only wants to do sports, they just do sports and whatever. But there is increasing evidence that the public is beginning to say, wait a minute, ooh. where was what was the original set of facts here? Let me see the birth certificate.
Yeah.
Where is the original document? What exactly did that congressman say? Because people are picking up information, what we would call third or fourth hand, and for the first time. In other words, they're getting third or fourth hand information, but they're hearing it for the first time, and now they realize, hey, wait a minute, I'm somebody on the left, and I don't even know what the right thinks. I don't even know what the facts really are. I don't really know what's in that bill. I don't really know what Congressman so-and-so wants to do to Medicare. I want to find out. And where do I go to find out? In other words, be a second responder, and that's where public broadcasting, I think, has a terrific role to play, and it must play it. Yeah. And is think of ourselves as a second responder as well as a first responder, where you can go, okay, where do I go now? Boom. You can go and find the facts, and from somebody you trust, and that's a gatekeeper. It's an old-fashioned role in a new-fashioned setting, and just in accordance with a new set of facts.
Yeah. Okay, take me all the way back, though.
Okay.
When did you first get the bug for news?
Well, I came at it indirectly. I lived in Beaumont in South Texas, and I wanted to be a professional baseball player. I was going to play shortstop for what was then called the Brooklyn Dodgers. I was 16 years old, sophomore in high school, and the coach told me that, Jimmy, you might want to work on a backup plan because you're not a good enough ball player to ever play pro ball.
That's never good advice,
Not
is it?
good advice. Well, but sports writers came to our games there in Beaumont, and I got to know some of them. I thought they were terrific. And also one of those many people who was touched by a school teacher almost at that exact moment, at an English teacher at French High School in Beaumont. I'd written a paper, what they then call themes in English class, and the teacher gave me a great grade, but she also said, she wrote on it, Jimmy, you're a very good writer. So I decided, hey, I'm going to be a writer, and told my mother, and from that day on, I went back to the newspaper. After coming home from school, told my mother, went back to school, and essentially said to the faculty advisor to the newspaper at French High School, here I am. With the exception of 3 years I was in the Marines, since that day, when I was 16, I've been doing journalism, and increasingly, the reaction to hearing the sound of the fire engines and wanting to know where they're going has been part and parcel of my life, and it still is.
When you mention the Marines, I'm curious how that shapes a young man at that time with the desires you had. What did you take out of that experience?
Ernie, I can tell you with absolute candor, I was only a Marine, active duty Marine for 3 years. It absolutely changed my life. It helped shape who I am today. I think, honestly, that many of the things that I have done that I'm proud of, I probably would not have done if I had not had the Marine experience. And it goes down to things like this. I was an infantry officer. I was a platoon commander. I was a kid, and I had 40 Marines of all kinds were under my control. I had full responsibility for them, whether or not they caught venereal disease, to whether they were eating well, whether or not they'd gotten a Dear John letter or whatever, and suddenly I had that responsibility. And they had a responsibility back to me. And every Marine is taught right at the beginning, you're only as safe and secure as the Marine on your right and the Marine on your left. If you take care of them, they'll take care of you. It's something that got into my bloodstream. It gets into the bloodstream, or into, I should say, the mind stream of anybody. The other thing that really affected me journalistically was when I went to the Marines. I'd never been on an airplane before. I was a white boy from San Antonio, Texas. Everybody I knew looked like me, talked like me, and whatever. And suddenly I'm with a bunch of people that not only don't always look like me, they don't talk like me, they don't think like me. And suddenly we are responsible for each other. And I'm responsible for them, and there's an inter-responsibility. So what the Marine Corps did was remove forever a cliche way to think about a group of people. A clan. Yeah. Oh, well, he's just a billionaire's son from Houston. I was in the Marine Corps with one of them. Oh, he's just a poor kid from Harlem. I was in the Marine Corps with one of them. I was in the Marine Corps with one of every kind of person there is. So since I started practicing journalism, and somebody says, well, he's just this or she's just that, I always say, hey, wait a minute. I know better than that.
So
friend.
When do you realize that? Is it something you notice immediately, or is it you're in a situation and in time you look back and say, wow?
Only a situation occurs. When I used to notice in the newsrooms that early time, I'd just gotten out of the Marine Corps, I was in newsrooms, and I'd hear somebody say, "Oh, well, come on, that guy doesn't matter, he's just this." And I'd say, "Hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That guy, there was a guy just like this, who was a sergeant in my platoon, who this, and it's just been with me now, and I am a fanatic about it. I mean, in our newsroom at the PBS NewsHour, anybody talks like that gets their head handed to them,
right.
because that's just as part of the culture that but it would never have. I don't think it would have happened. It's a kind of understanding of the fact that there is something called humanity that crosses all racial lines, all age lines, all every kind of ethnic lines, and that and if you're going to fight a war, you got to fight it with all kinds of humanity, and you're going to be dependent on people. And it's the other thing about the Marines that I learned is leadership can be taught. You can learn how to lead people, and discipline can also be taught. You don't have to be sloppy. It's not a natural thing. You can, if you are naturally sloppy, you can learn not to be.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm trying. How does all of this then play out in the newsroom? How do you lead journalists? I mean, we all know, both of us know definitely people in this business, and every one of them has their own idea what they're doing, where they're going. How do you herd these cats? How do you do it but not stifle what makes them special?
That's really hard. It's the hardest game in town. The best advice I ever got about this was from Ben Bradley. He was a friend of mine who was, the big executive editor of the Washington Post. Right. And he retired. And right after he retired, I said, "Well, Ben, what's this all about? Why are you doing?" He said, "Well, to lead a newsroom, you have to have a reporter or an editor come into you and tell you about a story he or she is working on and get as excited as that reporter is. That's what you owe everybody in this newsroom, is mutual excitement for their work. And if you can't do that, get the hell out. And because it just won't work. And because with the excitement, with the hearing somebody comes up with a story idea, right. Then you have also then earned the right then to be the good supervising editor or the supervising producer and say, "Okay, man, this is a great story, but you haven't got it yet. There's a little hole here. Go get it. Go fill that hole." And you're part of the process. You've got to be, in a journalism organization, the executives, whatever, from assistant city editor on up or an associate producer on up, whatever, they have got to become part of the process in order to lead people, to do things that they might. Because what you want to, most journalists operate alone. Yes, you have a film crew if it's television or radio. You have a crew, but in print. But it's different. There are technical responsibilities rather than editorial responsibilities. Most reporters go to an event and look around what's going on and make independent, individual decisions about, hey, this is what happened, this is what matters. And that judgment comes from doing it many, many times, and it comes with having the support of people who not only trust you, but they test you. And it's very complicated, and as you know.
Now, I mean no disrespect in how I set this question up, but you talk about excitement in the newsroom, and your show is not known for excitement on behalf of you or the anchors. Something that was very conscious with what you guys, from the way you dress, the music, the look, that was all planned.
Absolutely. Well, there was when we first started, the guy was then the media critic for Time magazine. He said, McNeil and Lehrer had the courage to be serious. And I always added, and also we have the courage to be boring. And that's even harder. But it's where you begin. In other words, it's all about what your function is in journalism. There's no one way to function in journalism. There's no right way, wrong way, whatever. There's straight news reporting. There's analytical reporting. there's opinion reporting. All three of those are very legitimate. The issue for me has always been they just have to be done by different people and they have to be carefully labeled and all that sort of stuff. But when you in our case, we set out from the very beginning to be a serious news organization. Serious defined by us, not by somebody else. And that we also, McNeil is a civilized man, and I like to think that I'm a civilized man. And we were very much in sync about the fact that we were going to invite people onto our program. We were not going to beat up on them. We were going to give them enough airtime to be heard, so they can be heard and understand. We will test them. We'll ask them tough questions and all of that, but we're not going to beat up on anybody. In fact, with the Marine thing, I say all the time, I've already proved how tough I am. I sure as hell don't have to go on national television to prove how tough I am. Yeah. Well, McNeil is the same way. It's became our culture, and there are some times, the first to admit this. I mean, you have a decision to make. You can go something, whether it's a 6-minute story or a 12-minute story. You want 2 guests, 3 guests, whatever, and our tendency has always been, when in doubt, go with the extra guest. And sometimes that is a mistake. It's too long. You've told people more than American people are going to ever want to know about a story. And that happens, and I regret it. But I'll tell you what, I regret that less than if we tell people less than they need to know. I mean, if you're going to fault, our basic philosophy is if we're going to fault with giving people either too little or too much, we'll fault on the too much line. And that makes us unique, but sometimes makes us boring as hell.
As we know now, you have walked away from the daily responsibilities.
Right.
Do you find yourself broadcasting to your wife? Are you still presenting the stories to people who will listen?
No. I always I've offended some of my colleagues, not in public broadcasting, but others. Where the one thing I hope I never became is somebody wakes up in the morning and says, "Good morning, dear. This is your husband with the news." That you're always on. You're always whatever. Well, I'm always on about what the news story. I mean, I really am. This is little boy, little girl work. You got to understand. We all have to understand that. We're sitting in a hotel room right now doing an interview, and we hear a siren. Ernie?
Yeah. Where's it going?
Where's it going? What is it? Is it a police car? Is it a fire truck? Oh my God! There's another one. And if you don't care, if you don't want to get up and run over and see what's going on, then you should never go into journalism in the first place. In my case, I still hear the sirens. And yes, they involve the sirens of politics, the sirens of foreign affairs, the sirens of fill in the blank, but it's still the same thing. And
so where do you go with it?
Well, I don't. I will still have some involvement, and I still have some involvement in the NewsHour. But I just felt it was time for. I've been doing daily journalism for 52 years, and that's terrific. I've done the little boy thing now for 52 years.
You run after those ambulances.
Yeah, and I just felt it was time to step back and take it and slow the pace down, not stop it, because I couldn't stop it if I wanted to. And I've written a lot of books, as you know, and I'm going to continue to write books. Somebody say, "You can't writing more books?" And I said, "No, but I can write longer ones."
You got the time.
Yeah, making me more boring, the books. But no, it isn't a decision based on any negatives. This is what I'm saying, and which is not many people can say that, and it helps being the boss. I'm the one who made the decision to change the name 2 years ago to the PBS NewsHour. That was all part of my glide path. We had to get from here to there, establish our team, and all that sort of thing. And I've been in complete charge of the glide path to my stepping back, and so it's been a joy for me. And the end result, I've had some dark moments where I think, oh no, wow, or it's something I'd see somebody on the air on our program. Oh, why didn't she do that?
One time, many years ago, you said to me that you worry in the middle of the night. You still wake up and worry if all of this will go away. That you're never 100% sure of it. Now, at this point, having let the daily responsibilities go from that, still any of that?
No, I don't think of that. I really don't. I have been so fortunate I mean, I've been doing this 52 years. I've been doing this I've been doing that television program for 36 years. Yeah. And when we started, nobody but our families watched. And we went out, 2 and 3 at a time. And the movement toward whatever I have become has been slow enough and earned enough, from my perspective, that I don't feel that this is mercury in my hands. One day people right. I know what television's like, and but I'm not. That is really not a concern of mine now.
Yeah. When you look, before we run out of time, I do want to talk a little bit about the presidential debates.
Sure.
What goes through your mind each time you're asked to do one?
For me, as a moderator of these debates, and I've done 11 of them, it's like walking down the sharp blade of a knife.
Yeah.
Very, very carefully, and because all you have to do is make a mistake and you can get hurt. It's psychologically terrifying. Professionally, it causes me at least to bring every ounce of everything I have to do one of those debates. And when it's over, it's the most exhilarating thing in the world. But the fear of making a mistake, of doing something stupid, that people are going to be talking. I've always said, when after a debate, if people are talking about me, even if it's positive, oh, Lehrer, it was a great question you asked. Yeah. They should be talking about what the candidate said, because that's what it's about. And I've always tried to keep to that. But it's even with all of that, and with all the help and all the stability, all the experience I've now had, you think, my God, you'd think this guy'd get used to this every once in a while.
Yeah, oh, here we go again.
Why is he terrified all the time?
Yeah.
Well, you show me somebody who does live television or moderates a presidential debate and is not terrified, I'll show you a guy's either a liar or a fool.
Looking back, any missteps that still haunt you today?
Nothing that haunts me. No, sure, I made mistakes, yes, and a couple of them, and of course they're very visible. Anybody who watched them knows about the mistakes, and I have no, and I always admit it and then move on. But I'm not haunted by it. I didn't do anything. I can look you straight in the eye, Ernie, and tell you, in the 11 debates I moderated, I didn't do anything that affected the outcome of a debate, much less an election. I am fully confident about that.
Yeah. Do you vote in presidential elections?
Well, I do. So, it's very complicated. I covered politics in Dallas, and you had to walk into the school and declare yourself a Republican or a Democrat in front of everybody, all my neighbors and all that. I was a political editor. I just turned around and walked out. And it got to be where I realized it was easier for me not to have to. It was so intense, and that was in the 60s. It was so. I was a newspaper man and writing a newspaper column about politics and other stuff. And it was just It was just. I was very much at ease just taking that off the table, my own decision, and I got used to it. And during the debates and all that sort of thing, I want to be able to make sure that that everything I do is completely clean in my mind. And I don't do it for outside perception. I wish nobody ever even knew about it. If somebody asked me, I told the truth. And I've been living with that ever since. Because of course I've had people hand my head to me. Oh, how in the world can you not vote? What example are you setting for the American people and the young and all of that? And I try to explain it, but it never goes down well.
Yeah. One more thing on debates before we leave that. Do you feel that the people you have met that have run for these offices, for vice president, president, are shown in the media to be who they truly are?
I really do. I really do, Ernie. It's I have discovered after all these years of doing the debates and covering presidents and people who want to be president, at that level there are very few accidents that get through the sieve. Yeah. That most of those people are intelligent, well motivated, skillful in the various things that it requires to be a candidate, and I have come across very few jerks because the jerk filter gets most of them as well. It doesn't have anything to do with me. It just has to do with the process of running for president is staggeringly. It scrutinizes everything about you. And what the debates do, it's the final thing. But these debates are usually within the last 3 to 4 weeks before the election. By the time the debates come, 95, 96% of the people have already made up their minds who they're going to vote for. Some of them are leaning and all that. But what they're really looking for, some of the undecideds, but really what everybody's looking for is this a good person? How is this person going to act under pressure? The stuff about issues, what are you going to do about Social Security? You're going to put it in a lockbox or whatever and all that sort of stuff. By the time the debates come, all that stuff has all been resolved in the minds of the voters. They want to get it. They want to get a take on this person. And so the language of the debates that people need to watch, and they do, they're way ahead of the voters on this. These pundits don't get it. It's the body of language. It's not the body of words on these presidential debates. And you can just look at several of these where the results, what told the story and what caused a particular result was what one of the candidates went aside, remember, when and hurt Al Gore, John McCain, in the debate that I moderated with Obama. McCain wouldn't look at Obama. That hurt him. That hurt. It had nothing to do with what he was saying or whatever. And that's always the case.
Have the American public, from your point of view, gotten it right every time? Don't have to say any races. I'm just curious if you think they have.
Yes.
Okay, and that finishes it.
Okay.
We are out of time.
Okay.
A pleasure to sit down and talk with you. Thank you for all the work you've done and for showing us so much of the world around us.
Thank you, Ernie. It's a pleasure to be with you always.
Jim Lehrer.
To order a DVD of this or any episode of InnerVIEWS, please visit HoustonPBS.org.